Welcome to Stocks in Translation, Yahoo Finance's video podcast that cuts through the market mayhem, the noisy numbers, and the hyperbole to give you the information you need to make the right trade for your portfolio. I'm Jared Blickery, your host, and with me is Yahoo Finance senior reporter Brooke DePalma, who's here to connect the dots and to be that bridge between Wall Street and Main Street. Today, we're going to be talking about the common thread among your social feed, your credit score, and how your favorite market indices are calculated. Our phrase of the day ties right into that, weighted average. It's your feed, your credit score, your index fund, same math. And our guest is going to connect the dots and break down the simple formula quietly running your financial life. In a market show and tell, we break down how stock market indexes are calculated, why the Dow is still stuck in the 19th century. And this episode is brought to you by the number 1. That's how many numbers most AI leaderboards try to boil a model down to. We help you sort out through some of the most useful measures to find your AI assistant. And today we are welcoming Noah Siracusa. He is a math professor at Bentley University who specializes in breaking down the hidden math behind everyday decisions from markets to social media. And he wrote a book about it, Robin Hood Math, taking control of the algorithms that run your life. And his work on AI rankings and predictions has been featured in mainstream outlets like Time Magazine. So it's great to have you here today, Noah. And I think I butchered your last name a little bit. John Siracusa.
There you go.
There we go.
Never forget it now.
Thank you. Yes. And we usually start out by asking the guests what their take on the market is, but you're not a markets guest. That's fine. We're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. So why don't you just talk to us about your approach to math? You are a university teacher professor in this.
Yeah, so I'm a math professor, and I, for many years, taught math, calculus, geometry, algebra, all that stuff. But over the years, I've moved more towards data science, and lately that means AI, and it's been really fun and interesting because it connects to so many real-world things.
Yes, it does.
I do want to get to the phrase of the day. Today's phrase of the day is weighted average. And if that sounds like math class, stick with me here because you already have this, you already live inside this formula, essentially. A weighted average is just an average where some things count more than others. And that one idea explains a lot. Why certain posts are showing up on your TikTok feed, why your credit score can move off something small, and why some stocks feel like they're pulling the whole market in one direction. Hello, NVIDIA. Noah, this actually sounds fairly simple. So just break down for us, what exactly is a weighted average in your perspective?
Yes, the idea is it's pretty easy to compare things if you just have one factor. So let me actually go to school rankings, college rankings, like U.S. News. Mm-hmm. You might be interested in the schools that have the best GPAs or the best faculty-student ratio or the best alumni donations. And on each of those, you can rank, and you can see what is the best school, the second best, et cetera. But the problem is, how do you compare schools if one has the best donations and one has the best class sizes and one has the best ... Once you have these different factors, you have to put them all on the same scale. And that's what these weighted sums or weighted averages do. You just kind of say, let's add up all the numbers, but let's put a weight in front of each one. And that weight will tell us how important these things are. So maybe class size is worth 8%, and alumni donations might be worth 10%. Mm-hmm. These are just decisions people make. But it turns out this basic idea shows up everywhere, as you've both been mentioning. Shows up in the stock market and social media. It's all over the place.
Let's hone in on social media because this is fascinating, and I promise everybody we will get to the market stuff as well. But tell us, give us an example of how it's used in social media.
So this is a funny thing. When I was writing this book, I wanted to try to understand the secret social media algorithms.
Oh no, tell us, please. I'm all ears.
I thought they'd all be different, right? Like TikTok is totally different than Instagram and Facebook. Turns out they all use basically the same formula, which is a weighted sum, the same thing we're talking about. And that's because we all know engagement drives social media, right? That's the whole idea. And that's true. That's how these algorithms work. But here's the thing. What is engagement? I can like a post, I can comment on one, I can reshare. There's so many different ways to engage. So what they do is they assign weights to different forms of engagement. Maybe a like is worth 30 points and a like might be worth 1 point, comment might be worth 30 points, a reshare might be worth 50 points. The engineers just come up with these numbers. But once they have them, they can combine, just like those college rankings for U.S. News, they can combine all the different forms of engagement into one overall measure of how much engagement each post is predicted to get from each user.
And for everyday Americans as well, something that also comes to mind is your credit score.
Yep.
And people often think, okay, how exactly can I, knowledge is power. So what do they need to know maybe about credit scores when thinking about how that compares to or uses a weighted average as well?
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. So on social media, they want to know what gets the most engagement. For credit scores, FICO and others want to know, they have a bunch of different factors they're interested in, just like the like and the comment and the reshare. But here it might be if you have different lines of credit, are you paying back your credit on time, various factors like that. And if you actually go to FICO's webpage, they list about 6 or 7 of these factors, and they even tell you the weights. So the biggest one, if I remember, is 35% of the FICO score. That's the highest weight, and that goes to paying back your debts on time. So it turns out, once you know these weights, once you know the factors, you can play these number games a little bit smarter. You can know what you should focus on.
Yeah, and FICO score also pointing out the amounts owed, also new credit lines, length of credit history, credit mix. So once you know that, maybe you can adjust your budget to think, okay, how can I maximize this to boost my credit score?
Yeah, because some things don't count as much as the others, so maybe you want to work on the things that count even more.
Right.
And that makes me think of this, we're in this society where there's these formulas that are running our lives, or algorithms. We're all part of these numbers games. And kind of my central philosophy is we can't stop that. I can't not be part of the system.
Not sitting at this table, no.
But I can try to play these numbers games more intelligently. I just need someone to tell me the rules. So what I'm trying to do is help people know what the rules are. How are you being ranked and evaluated? How are your choices being determined by these numbers? So we can do them a little more wisely.
So payment history and also reshare post-shared if you're
Nice.
writing down notes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I would imagine the rankings are going to vary a little bit by the social media or the social platform we're talking about, but essentially we're talking about kind of apples to apples here. I want to expand this into our markets coverage, so it is not time now for market show and tell. And today we're going to be breaking down 2 different ways that stock market indexes are calculated. The Dow and the S&P 500 are both market scoreboards, but they add up stocks differently. The Dow is price weighted, so a higher price stock swings the index even more, even if the company is not the biggest. So today, Goldman Sachs, with a share price of about $900, that is the largest. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is weighted by market capitalization or market cap, which is the market's price tag for the stock. So today, NVIDIA is the biggest, and that's $4+ trillion. So same market, different math, which is why the headline can change depending on which index you're watching. And we see this sometimes. The Dow might even be down as the S&P 500 is up. And of course, there's different stocks in there. But the fact that the Dow is weighted kind of like this method that hasn't changed for over 100 years, do you see that as a problem?
I do. So I didn't realize there was a difference until I started digging into it. I just wanted, when I was writing the book, some examples of different weighted sums that I could mention. And then it was really funny to realize that, as you mentioned, these stock indices are examples, but they're not all the same.
Right.
So I just finished writing about social media, where basically they are all the same algorithm. And then in this financial sector, I thought, wait a minute, this is strange.
Finance likes to do everything a little bit different.
It's a little
Sad.
different. So I think the Dow, unfortunately, it is a real limitation, because it's like just looking at the sticker price and not looking at how many things are sold or traded.
Yeah.
And I think that's misleading. A stock price might go up or down a lot, but if there's not a lot of volume to go with that, that shouldn't push the index up and down a lot. With Dow, it does. With the other ones like S&P 500 and NASDAQ, it absorbs that sticker price by looking at the volume that's being traded as well.
Yeah, a little history here. I happen to know the history of this because I looked into it when I first read about this. It was kind of a head scratcher, but way back in the day, before people had not spreadsheets, forget about spreadsheets, not even calculators, it would take, we had like the S&P, it wasn't the S&P 500 in 1928, it was like the S&P 90, something like that, but it would take a week to get the market cap weighted scores because you had to take the size of every company and add it all up together. And that's a lot of adding and that's a lot of dividing. And so maybe you get one number per week. But then the Dow, because it's price weighted, all you have to do is take that one number and divide it by something and then add it up. And plus there's only 30 stocks in the index. So a little bit easier there. I don't see a change anytime soon. But I will say there's another market measure that we've talked a lot about on this show, and it's VWAP. And so volume weighted average price. And you can see the word weighted is right in there. And that is kind of a benchmark that's used for institutional players to get paid. And what it's looking for, we talk about moving averages like the 200-day or the 50-day moving average. Well, this will weight each period by volume. So you get a more accurate description or a more accurate representation of where the money is going in the market. So I don't know if you've ever studied VWAP, but there you go.
Well, I haven't, but I just want to add, it's a really interesting distinction. There's all these weighted sums and weighted averages all over the place. But there's kind of a big dichotomy. Some of them, the weights are completely arbitrary, and other times they're meaningful. So US News, those weights are just made up. Social media, the weights are made up. You know, how much a like is worth compared to a comment. It's just arbitrary. But with the VWAP, as you mentioned, that weight is meaningful. With the NASDAQ and S&P 500, those weights are meaningful because market cap is a meaningful thing. So it's just interesting to think not all weights are the same. Some people just come up with out of their head, and others, they really represent something that natural.
And then also, too, when you think about what you're relating to each point, do you think that people are necessarily aware when you were writing this book of these different dichotomies that exist, or were you really surprised by the lack of knowledge around this?
I was surprised because I myself didn't know these things.
Like, what's VWAP?
And I just think, let's be honest. I'm a math professor. I've looked into these things. It's okay to admit we don't know because I don't think that reflects our shortcoming. Your viewers may not know this. I, as a math professor, didn't know. I don't think that's our fault. I think that reflects the fact that these things are not clarified to us. Like Facebook, Meta, all these companies could tell us more clearly what they're doing. Yeah. I would even say like Dow Jones and S&P 500, it's not like they're hiding it, but this stuff could be made more well-known. And I just kind of get the sense that maybe some people don't want it to be as easily understood as it is.
That's exactly what we're looking to do on Stocks and Translation. But we do need to take a short break. But coming up, we're talking about how to find the best AI bot and a runway showdown that takes a beat from the musical world. Stay tuned. This episode is brought to you by the number 1, which is how many numbers most AI leaderboards try to boil a model down to. But there are multiple different metrics within an AI model like accuracy, creativity, safety, speed. So Noah, these models keep improving on these benchmarks every few months, but most people have no idea what exactly is going into these chatbots. How do you sort of assess all these puts and takes when trying to find maybe one that works the best for you and what you want at the end of it?
Well, that's the key. It's the for you, because these companies like Claude and Anthropic and Google and OpenAI, they're really competing. So they want to say to the world, I have the best model. So how do you do that? You have to win some leaderboard. You have to place on top. But that might measure that the model's really good at doing some sophisticated math problem or some research or this or that. But does it affect you? So exactly as you're saying, when I go to use these things, I want to know, is it helpful for me to plan my dinner, to plan a trip with my kids, maybe to pick stocks? So there's so many things that matter to us individually that are not showing up on the leaderboards. So I think we just have to kind of push back, and sort of easier said than done, but I do think we need to push back and not accept these leaderboards as really representing our use of the model so much as just an arena where they compete with each other.
Let me open it up then. How would you design some kind of algorithm or get to answer the question, which is the best model to use? How would you go about that?
I think we have to kind of, and this is funny as a math professor to say this, step back from the numbers and the algorithms and the measures, because I think that traps us into looking at all these things in the same way. It kind of homogenizes and flattens things. I think we have to treat it like we treat other products. Like, think of Amazon reviews. If a bunch of people rate a model and say, oh, this one's really good at helping you plan vacations with your kids, that's useful information. I think human evaluators in a community, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
No. So let's think about how this is also infiltrating our other areas of our lives. And since we're on the topic of AI, let's just kind of stick there. We've seen it kind of influence the way corporations are going about their business. I'm wondering how it's penetrated education, because I know education, for better or for worse, can be very slow to change. So how do you see it? How do you see it changing education right now?
AI broadly?
Yeah, AI broadly, or specifically with your,
within your own
class.
classroom even.
Good question. So I'm on many committees. There's many discussions. We see good and bad. So we do see students are exporting their thinking process, their critical reasoning, their writing, all these to a machine. So a lot of them are not learning how to write. They're not learning the material that we want them to pass the test because they can just use AI. So I personally have been using a lot of oral exams, which is very old-fashioned and terrifying to a lot of students.
But just to get away from that algorithm.
Just to get away from all the technology. Just me and a human being sitting in a room just talking.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I think that's great. And because I was just about to ask you, what would you, Do you think that there's too much emphasis on just getting a number score from the kids? And how would you go about designing maybe the educational experience a bit better so it cannot be gamed by AI? And I guess where I'm going is maybe the flaw is in the educational system more than these AI bots that are jumping in.
I'm going to be a little controversial, but I think
Sure.
you're hitting the tip of the iceberg there. I think academia and education have been coasting for quite a while. Maybe it's like the Dow Jones. They did things that made sense 100 years ago. That doesn't mean it makes sense now.
Okay.
So I think there's been a lot of inertia where we just keep doing things the same way for many years. I think this is AI is a disruptive event where we have to reevaluate. There are a lot of people in higher ed that are terrified that this is, really going to destroy a lot of what we're doing. I think it's a chance to reinvent ourselves and to wake up and say, people want jobs. That's why most people are going to college. We want to teach them poetry and, all this stuff. They want jobs. So and that's because of the way the market is and the economy. And, it's hard to afford rent. It's hard to buy houses and things have changed since the 1960s.
And Noah, just to take a step back, the name of your book is Robin Hood Math. It seems like you're one of those professors who is very future thinking, very forward in terms of what the future does hold. Of course, Robin Hood, one of the companies that we cover very often here at Yahoo Finance, having quite a run year to date. When you think about what you were going to name this book, why that? And how do you think this sort of defines the next level of thinking overall?
A great question.
That fantastic question. I think it really fits into trying to give more power or agency into ordinary people. So Robinhood, the other company,
The other one.
is about letting anyone invest in stocks and not having to go through brokers. With my book, I'm trying to help people understand and kind of live more full lives in this very mathy, algorithmic world we're part of.
Yeah.
Going back to what you're asking about education, rather than just trusting what some officials at a university say is important, I think students are now realizing AI is empowering themselves and they can learn a lot. They can study, they can pass tests a lot. They can write essays with AI. So we're kind of stepping back and trying to think, what can we really do to help them? What do they need to succeed in the future world, the future economy? What can we provide? Knowing that they are going to graduate into a world of AI and everything else.
Yeah, and I would even argue what you're doing with these oral tests is so interesting because that is a tool that maybe they don't have in their toolbox just yet because they have relied on these chatbots now for the past few years even, has it been?
I think that you are on the right track here, and I really applaud that. What would you say to somebody at home, like just a few words of advice where somebody can start thinking about some of the principles that you've embedded in this, not only this conversation, but your book? Where do people start kind of taking control over things like their own social media feed or just how they think about it?
I would say it's really kind of phobia and anxiety. I think people worry that anything technical or mathy is scary and it's too hard and it's above them. I get, as a math professor, the biggest reaction I get when I talk to people is, oh, I'm not a math person or I don't do math. And just to get people to realize everyone does math, right? Anyone who's watching your show is doing a lot of math, whether they consider themselves a mathematician or not, because the world is full of numbers. You can't avoid it. So just getting over that fear and anxiety and to stop thinking of it as us versus them, that there's numbers people and everyone else. We all are part of this world, and math is part of this world. We can all do it.
Yeah.
That's a big part. And then I think just pushing for information and just thinking, if you don't understand something, and I tell my students this so much, it's not your fault for not being smart enough. It's their fault for not explaining it clearly enough. And I think this is true for me as a professor. If my calculus lecture is so bad that you don't get it, that's not your fault, that's mine. But I feel it's the same thing with like Meta. If they try to explain their algorithm and I as a math professor don't understand it, is that because I didn't do my job or because they didn't do their job? So I think we just got to have people pushing more. There's so many topics that come up. I just was discussing something with the Boston Globe about algorithmic pricing, where people use algorithms to set prices that are personalized based on all this data. And so all this scary stuff, and everyone's kind of afraid of it. But they're so afraid they don't even know what questions to ask. And I'm just trying to get people to say, ask how these things work. How are these prices set? What factors are involved? So I would just say, don't think so much of looking for information, but just get over that fear of asking questions.
Yeah, even
I
at
love
grocery
that.
stores, we're even seeing the possibility of them using this algorithm to sort of adjust prices throughout the day, throughout the time. And that definitely is a bit of a scary
It
thought
is scary.
there.
So ask questions, find out what's going on.
And you know who can answer those questions? The chatbots. We got to get to our Market's take on a classic Hollywood gab show staple, which we call Who Wore Better. And today's showdown is putting up sheet music versus ear training. Sheet music shows up in a perfectly tailored tux, playing every note exactly as written, clean, consistent, easy to grade. That's your benchmark world, rules, tests, and scorecards. The other side walks out in a sharp lived-in jacket, hearing the room and adapting on the fly. Same song, different read. That's markets, context, timing, and judgment when the score doesn't tell the whole story. So who's wearing it better, Noah? Is it the sheet music that scores perfectly on the test, no pun intended, or the ear training that knows how to play the room?
I'll give a cop-out and say it's both.
Okay.
My wife is a musician, and she teaches very ancient music as well as modern.
Like Hildegard von
Hildegard,
Bingen?
exactly.
All right.
Very much Hildegard. That just came up in our dinner conversation recently. And one thing she's always saying is the sheet music is not the end of the story. That's where the music begins. The performer has to take that, interpret it, and come up. So all the ear training you mentioned, that sits on top of the sheet music. So I'd say both.
Excellent.
So definitely keeping keen on top of learning. I guess with the foundation knowledge that you have in your book, just to relate this all back, how important do you think that it is for readers then to sort of move this into their everyday life? I know we sort of hit it before, but to think this ear training, what perks up your ears in everyday conversations after writing this book?
I mean, little things like the social media. So as I said, all the algorithms come down to these formulas that involve weighted sums of engagement. But here's just a little thing I never thought of until I was working on the book. And now I think about it every time on social media. One of the factors is how many seconds the algorithm expects you to watch a video. But here's the thing, if you rewatch a video, that counts as extra seconds. So if it's a 10-second video and you watch it 3 times, that counts as 30 seconds.
I did not know that.
I see so many videos where there's like a slide of text right at the end that flashes and then disappears. And you have to watch it over and over to catch it. Or it's the punchline to a joke and it's way at the end, so you have to... There's
Could
all
it be
these
that
tricks.
People are
Watch it.
gaming this? My
It
People are
could
definitely
be.
gaming
I'm
this.
losing my faith in humanity
But you know
as I
what?
sit here.
They game it, but now I feel like if we understand it, we can kind of counter the gaming.
Yeah.
We can see through their tricks a little better. So just little things like that to realize, yes, it's a numbers game, and they are playing it, they are gaming it, but we can resist that if we know the rules.
And to bring it all full circle, we even had someone from the creator economy. That was our topic on one of the most recent episodes of Stocks
Yes.
in Translation. And she was talking all about using these different algorithms to really boost your benefit, boost your platform, and ultimately monetize from that. And so, Jared, she's gaming it. We got to get on this.
Yes, I agree. With 30 seconds here, any final words to the viewers?
I think, AI is something that we have to keep thinking about, but my personal experience is as it develops and progresses, I'm just appreciating human experiences a lot more.
Yeah.
And like these oral exams, it sounds scary, but just sitting next to another person and talking to them one-on-one like we're doing here, it's just more and more valuable to me as chatbots and things take over more and more. So I just say, touch grass, be with humans.
Amen
Noah.
to that. I can get behind that
Me too.
full speed. So just kind of reviewing what we learned here today, and I learned a lot. Social media, FICO scores, VWAP, Dow versus S&P 500 calculation. It is all explained by basically the same weighted average formula, which makes things a lot more simple and approachable than we might have thought. And so that all gets us perhaps to ask the simple questions. And I love how we even worked in Hildegard von Bingen. You don't get to do that every day. So, Noah, it's been a pleasure having you, and we have officially wound things down here at Stocks in Translation. But be sure to check all our other episodes out on our video podcast on the Yahoo Finance site and mobile app.